We've all heard the stories about Chrysler's Hemi 426 engine, right? The beast that dominated NASCAR, the engine that still sparks conversation in garages throughout America. But why was it eventually banned from competition? Well, here's the interesting part. There's a dimension to this renowned engine that a lot of people don't know about. We're talking corporate greed, suspicious backroom deals, and a cover-up that shocked the motorsport world. Was the Hemi 426 really unbeatable, or was it merely a target of political strategies from rival companies? Tom Hoover, the brilliant engineer behind some of Chrysler's most iconic designs, including the 70 Plymouth AAR CUDA, the 426 Hemi V8, and the Max Wedge, significantly contributed to the brand's enduring legacy. However, despite his impressive resume, one nickname has stuck: Father of the Hemi. So, what is the intriguing backstory of this title, and what distinguishes Hoover's work on the Hemi from the other groundbreaking engines he developed?
The 62 cars were successful. The 63 cars were dominant at the drags. I mean, boy, was that a neat time. You would have loved it. But in the meantime, the engine wasn't doing well. The whole package, the car, the engine, the tranny, and so forth, didn't do well at NASCAR. So in April of '63, the decision was made, hey, let's do something significant here so that we can go be competitive in NASCAR.
The 426 Hemi was formed in the fiery furnace of motorsports, not on the streets. Chrysler struggled to compete in the NASCAR scene in the early 1960s against cars like Ford's 427 FE and Chevrolet's Mystery engine. Their reliable Max Wedge engines had performed admirably, but top-end speed was missing. They obviously needed a new weapon. And so in 1963, Chrysler's engineers set out to create an engine that would achieve legendary status: the 426 Hemi. The Hemi was built with the sole goal of dominating NASCAR. Its secret weapon, the hemispherical combustion chambers. This design allowed for larger valves, improved airflow, and more effective combustion. The outcome? An engine with such incredible power that the competition choked on its dust. The 426 Hemi made its debut at the 1964 Daytona 500, and it was a complete takeover. The car industry was shocked when Richard Petty's Hemi-powered Plymouth not only won the checkered flag, but also grabbed the top 3 positions. Massive, powerful, and utterly impossible to ignore, the 426 Hemi was a statement. So there's no surprise it had a nickname: the Elephant. This behemoth crushed all in its path. But what inspired Chrysler to build this enormous engine, and what shocking outcome emerged from its unstoppable power? The release of the street version of the 426 Hemi fulfilled every car enthusiast's dream. Who wouldn't want to drive a car with the same powerful engine that Richard Petty used to destroy the competition at Daytona? But it wasn't that easy to transform a high-performance race engine into a street-legal vehicle. Chrysler's engineers needed to implement some essential modifications to control the beast without sacrificing its character. The roaring 12.5-to-1 compression ratio was reduced to a more manageable 10.25-to-1. To withstand daily wear and tear, the lightweight aluminum heads, perfect for the track, were replaced with stronger cast iron ones. These adjustments barely brought the Hemi down to earth. So then, what was so unique about this engine? Well, let's discuss the specifications. The 426 Hemi was basically a V8 engine with a displacement of 426 cubic inches, or an incredible 7 liters. What really set it apart was its hemispherical combustion chambers. This clever design made room for huge 2.25-inch intake valves and 1.94-inch exhaust valves, surpassing the competition and guaranteeing the best possible airflow and fuel mixture. The result? Each cylinder has explosive power. In order to provide durability for daily driving, the street version's iron engine block was combined with cast iron cylinder heads. Even with its tamed 10.25-to-1 compression ratio, the engine managed to produce 425 horsepower and 490 pounds-feet of torque as claimed. However, to be frank, those figures were probably minimized to keep insurance companies and regulators happy. Undoubtedly, the 426 Hemi was an engineering marvel, but owning one was an entirely different experience. It was a beast with more than 800 pounds of pure muscle under the hood, and on paper, it was a powerhouse. However, it had an insatiable thirst for fuel and drank high-octane gasoline at a rate that would make even the most enthusiastic gearhead wince. Those two carburetors with 4 barrels, they required constant care to maintain their best performance, and they were as unpredictable as a diva on a bad day. Adding a Hemi to your car game with a hefty price tag, almost $900 extra back in the late 1960s, which made it unaffordable for many. Moreover, even while the raw power was undeniable, it wasn't exactly user-friendly. Maintaining the Hemi was not easy, and tuning it needed expertise. For drivers who were not experienced mechanics, it might feel more like taming a ferocious wild animal than driving through the city. On the road, the 426 Hemi was not exactly celebrated for its finesse. It has the ability to roar with unmatched intensity, but smoothness? It was not good at that. This engine was designed for racing, and only those who knew how to control it were able to unleash its capabilities. However, for those who were ready to take on the challenge, the rewards were nothing short of extraordinary. These jaw-dropping numbers cemented the Hemi's status as a performance legend, unmatched in its day. However, this begs the intriguing question: was the 426 Hemi a race-bred beast designed to struggle with the demands of everyday driving, or was it ever meant for the streets? Maybe the real answer can be found back on the racetrack, where its legend became unstoppable, its power ruled, and its story began, rather than on the highways. The 426 Hemi was a formidable force in NASCAR by 1965, and its supremacy was so great that the organization took an unusual action. They banned it. NASCAR mandated that any engine used in competition must be available in production cars, specifically targeting Chrysler's exclusive track-only Hemi. How did Chrysler react? Chrysler refused to back down. Rather, they turned the tables on NASCAR in the most rebellious way possible. They brought the race engine to the streets, creating 500 street-legal cars with the 426 Hemi. And just like that, the legendary Street Hemi was born, an icon fueled by defiance and raw performance. By 1966, the Dodge Charger, Plymouth Roadrunner, and Plymouth Barracuda, some of the most recognizable Mopar muscle cars ever produced, had adopted the Street Hemi. With a 426 Hemi engine powering them, these monsters could blast down the quarter mile in just over 13 seconds, performance that was nearly unimaginable for a production car back then. However, the Hemi's story did not stop on the streets. It ushered in drag racing and solidified its reputation as an unstoppable powerhouse. By the late 1960s, top-fuel dragsters were employing modified Hemi engines, and it was setting new benchmarks in drag racing. The Hemi was pushed to its limits by teams like the Ramchargers, Don Garlits, and Sox and Martin, who broke records and won titles. The engine supremacy was especially evident in the Super Stock and Pro Stock divisions, where it emerged as the top option for professional drag racers. The 426 Hemi became a part of racing legend when Don Garlits, one of the greatest drag racers in history, roared to victory at the 1968 U.S. Nationals. From that moment on, it became a phenomenon. It solidified its position as the undeniable king of straight-line speed, sending thunderous power reverberating across the country's drag strips. The Hemi's legacy endures to this day, as engines from Funny Car and Top Fuel dragsters can be traced back to this iconic design. No engine in racing history has ever produced an earth-shattering 10,000 horsepower like these modern Hemi-derived engines. There has never been an engine that so fiercely dominated so many racing disciplines. The 426 Hemi became a cultural representation of unchecked American power outside of the racetrack. Yeah, it's got a Hemi, was more than simply a saying. It was a mark of pride and honor. Fans of muscle cars proudly wore it, and movies, music, and TV shows turned it into the ultimate symbol of raw horsepower. Its distinctive and daring bulging hood became the hallmark of an age that was fixated with performance and speed. However, its rule was short-lived, as is the case with all stories. Stricter pollution laws and skyrocketing fuel prices in the early 1970s compelled automakers to reconsider their high-performance engines. By 1971, the 426 Hemi's heyday was coming to an end, marking the end of a memorable period in the history of automobiles. The Street Hemi was no more, but even in retirement, the 426 Hemi refused to disappear. Rather, it found a second home on the drag strips and continued to be a vital part of the automotive enthusiast community. Racers kept the Hemi alive with its basic design, which allowed today's fastest cars on wheels, the funny cars and top fuel dragsters, which burn nitrogen. At auction, restored Hemi-powered muscle vehicles fetch jaw-dropping prices. Some rare gems can fetch millions of dollars. Decades later, Mopar crate engines and modern monsters like the Hellcat and Demon still bear the Hemi name. These beasts' incredible power is a tribute to the original creators who could only imagine such numbers. But the 426 Hemi wasn't flawless in every way. It was expensive, heavy, and difficult to maintain for the average driver. Even while it was a racing marvel, it wasn't the best friend for everyday commuting. And that's a wrap for today's video. Now, here's the question for you. What type of legacy do you think the 426 Hemi leaves in today's muscle car industry? We want to hear from you. Also, what's your take on this engine? Legendary or just another myth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, click that bell, and stay tuned for more epic journeys into the world of muscle cars. But before you hit that exit button, make sure to check out our last video on Australia's most reliable two-door muscle cars. Trust us, it's a ride you won't want to miss.